All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And sometimes when I go on after I'm finished with a set of PowerPoints, I go on and wonder if I could or should do more. This is one of those cases. I went out to the Microsoft documentation and found their ASP.NET overview, from which they have some tutorials. And they talk about web forms, as you can see, and they talk about MVC. All right. And with MVC, they talk about MVC 5, 4, 3, etc. So I went out to the MVC 5 and, what's new in MVC 5, etc. And I started to look at all the different things that were in there. Well, then I found, more than anything else, I found a couple of URLs that were through here. And one was right here. And it's ASP.NET MVC Getting Started. All right, and then I found another one that probably was a little newer. And that one, as you can see right here, is on Getting Started with Entity Framework 6, Code First, using MVC 5. But for whatever reason, I decided I was going to go over this one right here. All right, and here's the different lessons that are in here. So getting started with ASP.NET MVC 5. There's a getting started section in adding a controller and adding a view and adding a model, creating a connection string and working with SQL Server, local DB, accessing your model's data with a controller, examining the edit methods in edit view, adding search, adding a new field, adding validation, and examining the details and delete methods. That's 11 total lessons, and I've decided I'm going to make 11 last videos, one on each one of these. So that's what I'm going to do. So getting started. Now you'll notice this is dated in that it's about almost exactly 2 years old, but I wanted to go over it anyway. Now, they have a completed project in here. That's the good news. The bad news is if you try to open it, it says it's a bad link, and it doesn't let you open it. All right? So I'm going to go and try to do this basically, from the get-go, by hand, whatever you want to call it. All right, so they tell you to get started by installing Visual Studio. I've got 2015. I'm not going to go over any of that stuff. I'm going to take it from right here where they talk about creating your first application. Now, probably at least a couple of these videos are going to be longer and a couple are going to be shorter. All right, and this is one that'll probably be shorter, but it says click New Project, select Visual C#, then Web, then ASP.NET Web Application, and then click OK. So that's what I'm going to do. Again, I'm just going to follow the steps that are in here. So I'm going to start up Visual Studio. Again, I'm using the Community 2015 edition. All right, and from there, I'm going to click File, New Project, not a website, but a project. Make sure that I've got Visual C# chosen, which I do. All right, and I want a web application, as they say. And they want us to call this application MVC Movie. I didn't use the exact same caseness they did, but the rest will be the same. So MVC Movie, and then click OK. All right. In the new ASP.NET dialog box, click MVC. All right, I'm not going to worry about authentication. I'm not going to worry about hosting in the cloud. I'm not going to worry about unit tests. I'm not going to worry about anything. Just choose MVC here and adding the folders, etc. for MVC here. That's pretty much what they show on page 4. And also, if you want to see it live, so to speak, that's what I've chosen. All right. So, as mentioned here on the bottom of page 4, and going on to the next page, it says Visual Studio used a default template for the ASP.NET project you just created, so you have a working application right now without doing anything. This is a simple hello world project, but it's a good place to start. So we'll click OK. It's building the project for us right now. And what we should see in a matter of moments is the same thing that you see in this part 1 of this series of handouts, or whatever you want to call them, on page 5. I'm not in any hurry, so I'll let it take its sweet time and build. And there's our application. Now, following along again, so that's what we have. It says click F5 to start debugging. F5 causes Visual Studio to start IIS Express and run your app. So let's do that. We can either hit F5 or we can click the green button up here. It doesn't matter, but for something new, I'll hit F5. So as it says, this causes Visual Studio to start IIS and run the app. Now when it does this, it's going to bring it up in localhost, and this is a random port. I believe that yesterday when I brought it up, it was 54,000 something. Today it's 53,484. But you can see we've got our default project right out of the box without doing anything. So this is what we have. Okay, and it says there, notice the address bar says something like localhost followed by the port number. And as you can see, whoops, we've got localhost followed by a port number. That's because localhost always points to your own computer. In fact, localhost is, for lack of better words, an alias for your own computer. In this case, it's running the application we just built. When Visual Studio runs a web project, a random port is used for the web server. So, as mentioned on page 7 of the handout, and to be consistent, I'm trying to show it to you here too. Right out of the box, this default template gives you home, contact, and about pages. All right, it doesn't, the image, it says here, doesn't show those. Depending on the browser, you might have to click a navigation icon to see the links. I don't. There's my home, there's my about, and there's my contact. We also have register and login pages over here. The next step is mentioned here on page 8 of this first handout. It says the application also provides support to register and log in. The next step is to change how the application works and learn a little bit more about ASP.NET MVC. So it says close the app and let's change some code. Finally, the last thing that's on here is, if you've noticed, they've got some MVC recommended articles. I'll open that up in a new tab. And there are a whole list of them. In fact, one of the things that's here is this 11-part series that I'm going over. Another one that's here is that Pluralsight ASP.NET MVC fundamentals that I showed you before, and I have not gone through it all myself. I did show you this. This is the MVA, or Microsoft Visual Academy ASP.NET MVC presentation by John Galloway and Christopher Harrison. And finally, this is the life cycle of an ASP.NET MVC application. It's interesting. You can download it as a 2-page PDF where they show, it says, this document shows the life cycle of every ASP.NET MVC application, beginning from receiving the HTTP request from the client to sending the HTTP response back to the client. It is designed both as an education tool for those new to ASP.NET MVC and also as a reference for those who need to drill into the specifics. So there it is, and there it is in detail. I'm not going to go over that, but again, it's out there if you are so inclined to take a look at it. All right, so in the next version of this, I will add a controller. Again, I'm going to walk through all 11 of these. There will be 11 presentations. I'm finishing up right now with presentation 01, getting started. Now, what I've called these things is, when I went through these first lectures, the ones I previously done, I called them AWD1111, which is the course name, -MVC-Bonus-Lecture01 through AWD1111-MVC-bonus-Lecture05. Well, now I'm going to have 11 of these, and I haven't done all the renaming, but these will be called AWD1111-MVC-bonus2. So there will be a total of 11 of these as well. So rather than you having to sit there and watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, rather than have you watch me retype, I'll just stop right here and I'll be back with Lecture 2 in just a couple moments.